Okay, you can't trust me to just talk on the mic either, so I'm going to read to you. Because my theater days are over. Okay. Recently, my partner and I were organizing one of the many doom piles in our home. We were sorting and cleaning and deciding which items still had a place among our eclectic choice of decor and treasured collections. I'm known to hold on to things long after their place in my life has come and gone. Luckily for me, the only grief I receive is playful, and my adoring partner patiently assists me in letting go of the plethora of things that no longer serve me. During this venture, we came across a collection of flags. As I went through them, I noticed that some were brand new, still in their cellophane package, some worn, frayed, and faded by the sun. Some were small, on sticks for waving, and some quite large. Among them was the first pride flag I had ever purchased. The first flag is a significant one. There really isn't an item I possess that brazenly screams whole, pure, and raw joy. This flag represents the rebellion of imposed expectations and my journey into authenticity. It is a banner of the joy that comes with being yourself, sometimes quite painfully. To understand why these stitched pieces of rainbow-colored fabric mean so much to me, I have to take you back to my early years growing up. Looking at my early life, it doesn't look traumatic or neglectful. In fact, it would be considered normal and pretty good to most. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood, went to school in my hometown from preschool through high school. I got decent grades, was in plenty of extracurricular activities, and was hardly, if ever, in trouble. I was raised in a non-denominational Christian church, and thus life outside of education was centered around, you guessed it, Jesus. All signs pointed to a life free of turbulence. As I grew from a little girl into adulthood, what happened to everyone happened to me. I started to find myself. That self proved to be something that was looked down upon. While everyone around me found crushes in the opposite sex, I primarily did not. In fact, with any expression of otherness, I was shut down. Like so many in my situation, I was told what I was feeling was wrong, that all I had to do was pray hard enough. So I did, over and over and over, every night until I fell asleep crying, begging God to change me. I'll spare you the gory details as those are for another story. Before starting high school, my parents divorced and the rift between my mother and I began. Self-harm, substance abuse, and plummeting grades followed me into high school, where I had to make my first real decision. I decided that living with my mother was too painful, and in finding support with my father, moved in with him full-time. This is also officially when I came out as a lesbian. I was around 15 years old. With enormous odds stacked against me, I pushed through high school with the only way I knew how and ended up in Naperville, Illinois for college. I was rooming with my then ex-girlfriend. I know, how gay of me. Life felt like it had really just begun. Most weekends I was driving back home to visit my then girlfriend, and I'm sure you can imagine how much my roommate loved that. However, when I wasn't in class or making the long drive home, I was falling madly in love with Chicago. At that time, my exposure to queer media began at Will and Grace and ended at the L Word, with Ellen DeGeneres sandwiched tightly in between the two. Rumors of an entire street where gay people gathered, socially, shopped, and dined ran wild in my brain. What do you mean there's a street full of just gay people? How can I get to Halsted Street? What is this magical place called Boys Town? The baby queer in me exploded. Our arrival on Halsted will forever be ingrained in me. Walking what seemed like hours to arrive in all of our glory at Gay Mart, although the kitschy, flamboyant gift shop is now closed, for 21 years it stood as a beacon in Boys Town. On that day, when I arrived there, I had one purpose. I was going to leave the city with a gay pride flag. And by God, $40 later, I had it. A 2-foot by 3-foot symbol of pride, made of fabric built to withstand any weather. For the first time, being queer didn't hurt, and I was hooked. For the next 15 years, my identity would develop, change, and grow several times. I started my transition at the age of 20, socially identifying as male and going by the name Addison. At 23, I started testosterone injections and officially became Cameron. At 26, I had top surgery and later a revision that aided in quieting the all-consuming dysphoria. I stopped the testosterone injections at 30, and now I am left with what often feels like a bunch of different pieces that don't quite fit together. You see, even though I was able to medically transition, society was not joyous in accepting me or my trans siblings. Murder after murder, shooting after shooting, and news of one after another of us taking our own lives seemed unending. My own community was, and often still is, ripping each other apart. I was at war, not only on the outside, but the inside as well. It felt like the world was spinning out of control, and I had the wrong tools in my toolbox. My addiction resurfaced and grew too big and overwhelming for me to control any longer. I had yet another decision to make. This one was whether or not I was going to give up on life. Did I want to get better, live sober, and make the excruciating journey back into reality? Or was it going to let my addiction take me out, drown me, and finally win? Was I ready to face society sober as the real me? Was I ready to learn how to use new tools that were foreign to me to get through this thing called life? R.I.P. Prince. This was my turning point, and as cliche as it might sound, it was my awakening. In July of 2023, I made the decision to finally go to rehab and get help with my addiction to alcohol, a drug I had used far too long as a tool to feel nothing. So what does joy really mean? The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines joy as A, the emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune, or by the prospect of possessing what one desires. B, the expression or exhibition of such emotion, gaiety. Gaiety. That seems appropriate. So what does trans joy mean? There really is no dictionary definition. There's no one path to find it. There's no hard and fast way every trans person feels it in their transness. For me, I have not only found but cultivated my joy in being trans through radical self-acceptance. Radical self-acceptance is the practice of fully embracing our true nature. It is loving the entirety of our human experience, imperfections and all. The key word there is practice. Since starting this practice, I have come to love the good and the bad. Getting sober was the tool that allowed me to do this. I finally give up the pain that the weight of being other inflicted. Instead of chasing away what is difficult, I embrace every aspect of myself, and it has given me freedom, and most certainly joy. So those flags. From the first and the original to the new and modern, each hold a piece of that joy. That joy I proudly hung in my dorm room as a lesbian, and each new place I've called home since. I've flown them in front of hundreds as a trans man, proclaiming with pride that queer people are beautiful, powerful, and holy. These flags I still fly proudly as a non-binary person, a queer person, and one who is filled with joy. Thank you.